I'm a 30-year-old male and my best friend got married last week. I just bought a house and my wife is expecting our son in November. So I let him know I was limited in what I could contribute financially, but did tell him I would try my best. So, I went to the bachelor party in Maine, I rented the tux, and paid for mine and my wife's dinner at the rehearsal dinner. I also had a gift of $300 that I was going to give them, but we will get to why I didn't give it to them. His now wife, then fiancé, texted me multiple times a day with updates fine. I didn't always respond and it got to the point where if I didn't respond at least once a day, I'd get a call from my buddy. I have a full-time job and am redoing some rooms in my house, so I'm busy. She texted me for the following reasons. 1. My wife was not allowed to talk about our pregnancy at all. She didn't want anyone to focus on that more than her, the bride. 2. She was not going to order special food for my wife, no one asked her to. My wife was fine with whatever she was going to be served. 3. I was not helping the groom enough, he had to help her with favors, seating charts and programs. So I had to help him with those things, according to her. She also said to get ready to help with thank you notes after the wedding. 4. She said if I was a true best man, I would offer to pay for the bar bill. I don't even know what that means. 5. She had to read to approve my speech before the rehearsal dinner and wanted to be included as much as my buddy. She told me to make up things if I had to. I was also not allowed to include anyone but the two of them and no inside jokes or stories about my buddy that didn't include her. 6. Her last text said to tell my wife to keep it together and not make a pregnancy scene during the wedding. Also, she wanted her to choose a dress that downplayed her pregnancy as much as possible. I was just so aggravated. I spoke to my friend to see if he could reason with her. He told me to just play ball on this one, it's her day, and to cut him a break. Because he'd be dealing with her nonsense for the rest of his life. I was annoyed but calmed down. The day of, all the bride and my buddy do is scold me, berate me and bark orders. I head down to the bar for a drink. The bride's mother is there and warns me not to get drunk because I've ruined her daughter's day enough. I didn't give them the card with the cash and in the speech. I used my friend's exact wording about having to deal with her nonsense for the rest of his life. I wished them the best and told him I'd always be there for him, especially during the divorce. My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills / send her cash. I'm also her only living child now as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care, I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, He didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the first of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes. His parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31 years old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc. but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man? I am a 39 years old male, and I lost my son in 2019 due to a chronic heart condition. He was 15 years old. It was devastating and I just couldn't take it, especially when my family did little to nothing to support me during these difficult times. They didn't bring my son meals when he was at the hospital. They didn't let me go home and rest even for a few hours. They didn't take care of other things while I had a lot to deal with. I wasn't offered any help, just words. They'd just talk but do nothing. Despite the struggle, I've created an account for my son's college fund and kept putting whatever I could get at the time, and my son would talk about that a lot. He was depressed but always believed that he was going to get better and continue his education and attend college. I started saving money to keep him motivated and to make him feel like he could be like any other kid with hopes for a good future. He had a very close friend that's about the same age as him. They were friends for 5 years, and I can't express how his presence in my son's life helped him through the worst days. Sometimes his friend would spend the night with us and try to get my son to do activities and lighten up his mood all the time. To be frank, his friend was closer to him than his own family. He never stopped visiting and asking how I'm doing after my son's death. He'd show me handmade projects he made for my son and as a way to remember him, and we'd sometimes just sit and talk together or cry together. Last week, while I was with my family, my sister asked me what I was going to do with my son's college money. I didn't want to mention this, but since she asked, I told her that I will be giving the money to my son's friend. She barely even recognized his friend and was confused and said that my nephew deserves this money since he's family. My mom agreed that I wasn't thinking straight and that I should help the people close to me, family, and that my nephew has a right to go to college, and I was wrong for giving this opportunity away to someone else. I didn't know what to say. They kept pointing out that I was making a mistake and how my nephew will resent me if he finds out. thing is, my nephew wasn't close to my son. I don't even know why he'd be bothered. My sister went on about not being able to afford my nephew's college. I told her this was my decision, and I felt more comfortable that way. She started lashing out, constantly texting me, constantly wanting to talk to me, and ending up arguing. When I snapped, she had my mom calling me, basically guilt-tripping me and telling me I'm wrong and that I needed to think about this. It's just too much pressure, and I'm feeling lost and unable to figure out how to deal with this. So I live in a flat with 3 other people: childhood best friend, a guy from my uni course, and his cousin. For the most part we get along really well and rarely have disagreements. However, this has been a real point of contention lately. About 6 months ago I began a relationship with a guy I've known for a couple of years. I know it's still a fairly new relationship, but I really like him. He makes me really happy and we're pretty serious about each other. Up until recently, he would come visit me at my flat 3 to 4 times a week. This was mostly due to the fact that I have chronic fatigue and going on proper dates can be really challenging for me. Instead of going out to dinner or a film or whatever, we'd just chill in my room or the living room, watch TV and get takeout or cook together. I didn't really consult anyone about this, Bex to say. All the other flatmates have their partners over as often, if not more so, and B, he rarely spends the night and usually leaves before 10 p.m. because of his work schedule. So the issue, 2 weeks ago, comes to me and tells me that I need to stop having my boyfriend over because it's starting to get annoying. I asked her why, and she said it's irritating to have someone who doesn't live there skulking around all the time. I pointed out that her boyfriend sleeps over 3 nights a week and thus is here more often than mine, and she claimed that was different because they've been together for 11 years and are moving in together once her lease is up. She said she's discussed it with the other flatmates and they've all agreed he needs to stop coming over or he has to chip into the rent, because it's getting ridiculous. Note: nobody else's partner chips in on the rent. I confirmed with the other 2 that yes, this is an agreement they've made. Though my best friend said basically made her agree by threatening to cut off the Wi-Fi and utilities, which are in her name, if she didn't. I asked if this rule applies to everyone, but apparently it's just me. I pointed out that it's unfair and was basically told to deal with it. My potential assholery, I've begun loudly insisting that if my partner isn't allowed to come over, neither is anybody else's. If I answer the door to anyone's partner, I'll send them away. If I come home and someone's partner is there, I'll make a point to mention that I thought we weren't having partners who don't pay rent over anymore. I've asked boyfriend over and over how much rent he's paying and pretend to be affronted and make a fuss when he says he doesn't. Everyone's pretty pissed at me and is telling me I'm being unreasonable. I know I'm being petty, but I think it's unreasonable that there's one rule for me and another for everyone else, and I'm trying to make that point. Am I really the asshole here? Some questions people keep asking. If I knew of something my boyfriend was doing to be annoying / if anyone had told me that he was doing something, I'd have included it. I'm not aware of anything he does, and when I ask why I doesn't like him, I just get a shrug and just do. I will also state I'm bi, and she's never had an issue with any female partners I've had. We don't hang out in the living room much. We literally only use it if there's something we want to watch that I can't get on my bedroom TV and there's nobody else in there. We use the kitchen more often than the living room, but honestly even that isn't that often. We eat far too much takeout pizza rip. A lot of people seem confused, so just clearing up who's who in the situation. The one who brought all this up is not my best friend. Not to get too much into a tangent, but basically just over a year ago I was moving out of halls at university and was looking for a new place, so we decided to move in together. At the same time, a dude from my course was looking for a flat share. We couldn't find a 3-bed but found a really nice 4-bed, and he mentioned his cousin was also looking for somewhere to live, so she got on board too. I only met her last year and we don't really know each other very well. By chronic fatigue I mean chronic fatigue syndrome. Sorry, that's apparently so unclear.